Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Up next on Another View, our roundtable pundits weigh in on current events that carry over from 2015 but have new twists in the new year. Today, we talk about gun control, police shootings of African-American males, the legal woes of Bill Cosby, and how one Hampton Roads city is fighting back against a rise in homicides. Roger Chesley, Carol Pretlow, Bill Thomas, and Will LaVeist are here. We'll get the discussion going with the Another View Roundtable right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Another View. Lisa, Victor, and I wish you all a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year. Today is the first roundtable of 2016, and we've got lots to talk about, so let's meet our pundits. Roger Chesley is a columnist with the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Barbara.
I'm so glad to see you. It feels like we haven't been together in a while.
Well, I missed last month because I was away for my daughter's graduation. Congratulations, Maya.
Yes, we gave her a big congratulations at the end of last show, too.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Carol Pretlow is a political science professor with Norfolk State University. Happy New Year, Carol.
Happy New Year, Barbara, and everybody.
Good to have you back, too.
Good to be back.
Bill Thomas is our community activist. Happy New Year, Bill.
Hey, same to everyone.
How you doing?
Yeah, looking forward to results.
Excellent. And Will LaVeist is here. He's a journalist, author, and talk show host. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming. So before we get into the topics that I talked about in the tease, this just came in from the Virginian-Pilot. City Treasurer and former Vice Mayor Anthony Burford was indicted yesterday on federal wire fraud and perjury charges stemming from his time on City Council. And as you know, he is currently the elected treasurer of the city of Norfolk. An initial appearance is scheduled for 2:30 this afternoon in the U.S. District Court in Norfolk. He faces 8 felony counts, including conspiracy to commit honest services, wire fraud, and conspiracy to obtain property under the color of official right. So I don't know if any of you have any comments on this. I know it's an unfolding story, but I thought we'd be remiss if we didn't say something about what's happening with Mr. Burford.
Well, obviously, they are serious charges against someone who is a constitutional officer, somebody who had been rising in city politics for years now, had been a vice mayor at one point, and we got wind of some things as recently as last year. We knew that subpoenas were being issued. We knew people were being called before the grand jury, and really it's been a waiting game for when the shoe would fall. And we've tried to report as we learned of different developments in the case. But obviously, serious counts against Anthony Burford.
Will, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that an indictment is, Roger says, very serious.
Pull your mic up a little bit.
It's very serious, but people should remember that an indictment does not mean that he is guilty. There's a process that has to go forward, but at the same time, we know that these types of charges are not beyond the realm of possibility for politicians. As I was reading it, unfortunately, I was thinking about Kwame Kilpatrick, the mayor in Detroit, and how when initially things came out about him, there was a lot of uproar and this is not possible and so forth and so on. And as that played out, we saw it differently. So hopefully for Barefoot and the city of Norfolk and his family, hopefully it will turn out well, and it won't be that he's guilty of these things.
Bill, you know him. Anything you want to add?
No, it's always sad. It's sad where when you get into any endeavor in life and you see outstanding leadership that Mr. Burford was representing, and this is nothing more than one phase in that is a sad phase, but it's nothing until it's something. So I'll wait to make it become something before I comment on it.
Okay, and Carol?
Yeah, I think it's very sad and unfortunate also for the city. But again, I would reserve judgment until I hear the defense, what defense they are opposing for this. Because it's one thing to be charged, but then once you hear the defense, sometimes it comes together and you understand the whole picture better.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
All
Bill
right.
Cosby.
And we'll talk about him later on.
Let's not get started.
All right. Portsmouth has had more than twice the number of homicides in 2015 than in 2014. According to Portsmouth Police, there were 27 homicides in 2015 compared to 11 in 2014. Thank you, Roger, for the research. Also, according to police, all but 2 of the victims were black. And according to investigation by News Channel 3, less than half of the homicides between 2011 and 2014 have been solved in the city of Portsmouth. What is going on in Portsmouth, Roger?
Well, it's something that's very disheartening. And before you had some of the family members of some of the homicide victims come to council, it seemed as if council members, especially the mayor, weren't really responding to the creeping crisis. And you could say, well, 27 is not necessarily a huge number, but it's more than double what it had been the year before. And when you just take a look at the rate is so much higher than many of the surrounding cities. And there was a feeling, I went to the press conference, and you really shouldn't call it a press conference. It took place on New Year's Eve, because none of the council members or the mayor really wanted to take questions and broke up the gathering before them. But so little in specifics as to what the city was going to do to counteract this really took place at that meeting. It was more of a pep rally than anything else to say, we're going to work together on this. Well, you should have been working together on this for months now. If you were really attuned to what residents were saying, if you were attuned to what the problems were within the city in terms of the number of homicides, you should have been saying something much more. You should have been working actively on this. And the fact that we came out with the story a few days before the press conference suggests that it was more a reaction to what the pilot had done, as well as to what citizens were clamoring about. Why aren't you doing something about solving these cases? Why aren't you doing something about curtailing the number of homicides that are taking place here?
Well, I found it interesting, Will, that in within City Council, at least according to the reports that I've read, that the City Council members who are white say that the problem is that the budget was frozen, that the police department is not operating at full capacity, and this is the reason why these homicides are happening, and they also haven't had a chance to solve them. The African American City Council people say, no, this is much more a societal issue. Until we deal with poverty and lack of jobs and so forth and so on, that nothing will ever change. It seems like everything in Portsmouth, and I don't know whether this is just the way it's reported or if this is really true, but everything seems to have a racial overtone to it. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think that becomes one of the big obstacles to actually getting anything done, is that people tend, particularly politicians, will tend to fall into camps in terms of what we think the issue is. And when you start falling into these camps, then you don't have as much of an incentive to really solve the problem. You end up arguing more about what your differences are than you are addressing the real problem. And with all these universities that we have, fine institutions that we have here, we've got researchers, criminologists, sociologists, economists that are studying these issues all of the time. And if they are, as the politicians, are interested, really serious about getting down to some results, they should bring those individuals in, because they spend the majority of their time really understanding what the root of the problems are. And the thing is that both sides are correct in what they're saying. It is both of those things that are going on. But if all you're going to do is say, if you only do it the way that I want you to do it, you're not going to get anything done.
Bill, I'm just looking at your face. Just
Here we go again.
smiling at will.
Happy New Year. There's not a sociologist or criminologist in the face of the earth that can solve this problem. This problem is a moral problem. This problem is a community problem based upon the breakdown of religion and values in some of our communities, families breakdown, lack of jobs and opportunities for these young men, the criminalization of education by not educating these young black men so they can go out and get a good job and take care of their families and take care of their children. That's it. I've been talking about this socialization of America where we think somebody outside of my house can solve my problems. The mayor cannot do this. He's a decent person. I've known him for years and years and years. An ODU graduate, just a fine guy. He's a little shy. He doesn't really understand how to handle the media, so he should get somebody that could help him do that. But beyond all of that, this is not his. He's the mayor. He's got to figure it out.
Shy?
But it's the
I don't know him to be shy.
I've never known
but media.
Go ahead. I was going to ask you to clarify that.
Because he is very articulate when he says things, but he doesn't have a good grasp of how to handle the media. And that is his problem. But that is not the problem either. The problem is when you have 60, 70% unemployment. Dr. Cook, I've talked about his report on the status of African-American blacks for years and years and years. He hit it right on the head, where right now not only are we losing jobs in the black community for people that have college degrees, which has declined, the number of untapped workforce participation by African-American males in the Commonwealth of Virginia is atrocious. I mean, it is just out of control. And I'm an economist. We have very, very good sociologists and criminologists at Norfolk State and at Hampton and every place else. But the problem's in the household, the problem's at home, and we need to fix that.
Well,
And you see, what I just pointed out is that what you just saw, what happens right here,
Don't interpret what I said.
is
just
example.
spell it out.
Okay,
No, what
hold
you
on,
just
let him
saw
speak.
happen right here is an example like what you see happen in the council. We didn't disagree at all on anything.
Yes,
But
we
if you're
did.
listening to it, you would have thought that we're in disagreement.
Well, we are.
And what I said is that there are people who are studying this and can give you the specifics, like he said, and then begin saying, here's what has worked in other areas that have similar environmental situations. Here's what has helped to be able to empower families to be more responsible and do things. We didn't disagree, but if
Yep.
you're listening, you would think that
we
that's what the
disagree.
case is.
We clearly
well, I
disagree.
mean, Will said that it was the problem of both societal as well as
No.
lack of policing.
It's a problem of families, of fathers not in households.
That
of
would fall
children
into
not going-
societal. That's what we're talking about.
No. People got to be held accountable and responsible. Parents, it's my responsibility to raise my children and then to try to help out around the neighborhood. That is not a police problem. That is not a sociological problem. That is nothing but parents doing their jobs and churches. And you don't need nobody to
Okay.
study that. Just do it.
Carol?
But how do you, even if you acknowledge the fact that this is an individual or a family problem, how do you get to the point that you correct those problems for the benefit of the people in the community and the society? Just saying that this is their problem and I don't have anything to do with it does not help the community at all. So why don't the two sides get together, decide, okay, here is our agenda, here are some ways to solve the problem, here are the pros and cons of these ways, and here's where we're going to meet at the middle.
What, Roger?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily, I don't expect the mayor to go into people's homes and
Yeah, you
try to
do.
get them to do their homes better. But I do expect him to show some leadership to come out in September when you see that the numbers are as high as they are and say, hey, this is something we have to work on, we have to fix. Let's mobilize our churches. Let's mobilize some of the social service issues or assets that we have in our city and see if we can bring something to bear to stop this. I do think it's a big problem of just the fact that we don't seem to treat each other with the respect and dignity that we should. That
Thank you.
we're too quick to pull out a gun
Kill you.
to settle our differences. This was something that was noted when the police chief did speak that day. And another point that he made, that fortunately, if you are not involved in the drug trade, if you're not hanging around people who are involved in the drug trade, you are still relatively free from violence. But we know that all gunshots don't necessarily have names on them. So if you are in the vicinity, you could be affected. But, that's the leadership I want to see from the mayor. That's the leadership I want to see from the council. And I want the mayor and the city manager to do a better job of communicating with the press and with residents. There is a feeling from too many residents that I've talked to over the past year that there's a certain haughtiness by the mayor, and that there is not enough communication by city leaders with residents. And I think that contributes to the problem.
Give me a break. Just
ahead,
please give me a break. Roger, I agree with both of you. I just think we got to get to where the problems start. And the ability to be able to fix the problem starts at the beginning in the House. That's just like President Obama saying now that he can go take guns and regulate guns and fill out more paperwork and pay more taxes on guns. When he came from Chicago 8 years ago and the murder rate was outrageous there, why didn't he say it then? If he cared for, and if we cared for with the leadership, and I agree with you there on Roger, why wasn't that a priority 8 years ago when we already had? I'm just saying it. Until you get back and tell parents, raise your children. Get home at night.
So like
do
I
your
said,
homework.
the discussion becomes about what we discussing.
No, it isn't. Well,
That's what we're talking about.
Here's what I'm going to tell you.
We're going to talk about what we've been talking about.
And that silliness,
that's not silliness.
that kind of silliness.
That is
here's what
exactly
I know.
what
All right,
people
one
just
at a
heard.
time, you guys, so that our audience can
all
understand
of us
you.
agreed on the issues
No, you don't.
that are permeating there. Your emphasis is that, that one issue about family is the issue. If you solve that issue, then you got the entire issue solved. All the rest of us are saying is that we agree, but we don't think that's all that's involved here.
Okay.
That's
And
all.
since you did bring up President Obama and the gun, he did
What a
use his
segue.
exactly. He did use his executive powers to implement some gun control
Yeah, that was a
measures
segue,
this
yeah.
week, he got very emotional during his speech. Let's take a listen.
Our unalienable right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, those rights were stripped from college kids in Blacksburg and Santa Barbara, and from high schoolers at Columbine, and from first graders in Newtown, and from every family who never imagined that their loved one would be taken from our lives by a bullet. So let me outline what we're going to be doing. Anybody in the business of selling firearms must get a license and conduct background checks or be subject to criminal prosecution. We're going to hire more folks to process applications faster. We're going to do more to help those suffering from mental illness get the help that they need. We're going to boost gun safety technology. If we can set it up so you can't unlock your phone unless you got the right fingerprint, why can't we do the same thing for our guns? Second Amendment rights are important. There are other rights that we care about as well. Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad. And by the way, it happens on the streets of Chicago every day.
You're listening to Another View, and I'm Barbara Ham Lee. So the president got emotional, Carol. He thought about those kids. I mean, the Republicans came out immediately bashing his ideas and what he has done through executive order. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think that once it gets to the House, there's a certain amount of budgetary control that they have. So they don't even have to refuse to sign it. They can say, look at the amount of money that is designated. We're not going to fund it. I think that would be an unwise solution, and I think this is a problem that the American public deserves an answer to that goes beyond that. The other side of it is I keep hearing people say, well, it was unconstitutional. It's not. Well, the president has the authority to do those things that he thinks are in the best interest of the public and to see that the laws be faithfully executed. And so that whole dynamic becomes, how do you interpret his authority as president?
Roger?
I almost wonder if anything meaningful to happen will have to happen under a Republican president. It's clear that Republicans in Congress do not want to do anything this president wants, and that they see gun control and gun rights as something that they feel like they have the upper hand on. And so, and if they don't feel like it's really necessarily a problem with most of their communities, most of their constituents, they're not going to go forward on that.
And the
we
president even did say during the press conference that he knew it would not happen under his presidency or probably in his lifetime.
And I think the president, obviously,
no, that's not what he said.
No comments.
The president obviously has, some control because he can issue executive orders and get some things done that way. But I think it's very clear that Congress is just opposed to him on most of his agenda. I want to point out something. Just a day or so before the attack in San Bernardino from reputed Muslim extremists, several doctors had gone to Capitol Hill, and they were pleading with lawmakers to lift the restriction that's essentially blocked the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention from conducting research on gun violence. It's been in effect mostly for 2 decades, and it's something that the president has also pushed for. Now, this goes to the lunacy of anybody who would oppose something like this. Why don't you want research on what gun violence is doing or some of the causes of gun violence or some of the results from that? Why wouldn't you want legitimate research on that? The opposition all comes from gun enthusiasts in the NRA that don't want the general public to have this research. So this is the craziness that we have to deal with in this country.
Okay, let me correct one thing. The president said it would take a long time. So let me correct that. But Will, then when does the people, when do they rise up and say, you know what, we don't care about NRA, NRA. We're going to go and we're going to fix this gun problem? Is that ever a possibility, do you think? Because money seems to be the key here in terms of what gets done and what doesn't.
Well, I would have to say probably no, because a lot of the people are also members of the NRA, or they're also, just for full disclosure, gun owners like I am, and have a concealed carry permit like I do.
Well, Bill, stop.
So
let me ask the question then. How do you
ahead.
feel personally then, since you disclose you're a gun owner and then you have a concealed permit?
That's right.
Do you have an issue with any of the executive orders that the president
Absolutely
put
not.
forth?
I don't have an issue with anything that he's done. In fact, what he did in fact do is very minimal, and it really doesn't change much of anything. It was really, again, I love my president. I love the first family, proud that he's African-American president, all of that, voted for him. But it's really very political, honestly. There's not much that he did. He could have done it during the time of Sandy Hook. If he was so moved by Sandy Hook and what happened.
Well, he did come out with the program and tried to get some things through Congress.
Right. And I'm saying that, but I'm saying this particular move at this particular time, I think that, there was some timing that he employed in doing it and holding on to it until now. I think
he has said that he doesn't have to worry about being elected any longer, and so he feels like he can get some things.
Sounds like
perhaps
a very political thing to say. If you're really interested in trying to move the needle and get things done and really get something done, would you operate in that way? And again, I've covered politics as a journalist. We all know it's the give and take. Timing is very important. But I find it interesting that this was done around the same time that Congress went and made the move to repeal Obamacare, take a little thunder away from that. And again, but as a gun owner and someone that absolutely would use his gun on someone like Bill Thomas, who came to be stepped to be wrong, he did not. I feel no risk. My problem is, when are they going to do something about the illegal gun owners and people making illegal sales? Because that is what is causing the crime that you see that he alluded to. He said, and by the way, is happening on the streets of Chicago.
That's
Those are the illegal homicides. We were just talking about Portsmouth. Those are the illegal gun owners that are committing homicide. When you talk about Sandy Hook, that gentleman who had the mental health issues, he got those were legal guns purchased by his mother that he got access to. So whatever was done is not going, other than the mental health piece, nothing that was done was going to address Sandy Hook or Chicago.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with the Another View Roundtable. Roger Chesley with the Virginian-Pilot, Carol Pretlow with Norfolk State University, community activist Bill Thomas, and journalist, author, and talk show host Will LaVeist. And let me say,
peaceful man.
Exactly. I was going to say, please, people, do not send me
in the spirit of Martin Luther King. But I will protect myself like Malcolm X.
Bill, go ahead.
Well, last week I had one guy tell me he had to pray for me. So I'm getting it all good. But let's talk about something here. Number one, I do agree with Will on that. The overall illegal issues. Number two, they're going to have a gun show down at Norfolk Scopes tomorrow. And the line will be around the block. And I will get there early so I can be there so that I can, along with my daughter, who is a very pacifist person but feels she lives in Washington, D.C. And let me tell you what happens, Rogers. They want the fingerprint. You know what they do in Washington, D.C.? Two kids just got shot. You know, you got to put your fingerprint on the your little device.
On your phone, on your smartphone?
You know what the little criminals do now? They take their gun out and then make you put your fingerprint on your phone so they can then steal it from you. So
wow.
You have to be concerned about the ability and the outrage of the individuals that are committing these crimes. It's the criminals. Now, do we need to have a discussion about gun controls? Absolutely yes. Do we need to have some ability for us to understand that you step on somebody's toe at the nightclub tonight, and please believe me, at least 3 African Americans will die before Monday morning at the club. Somebody stepped on somebody or said something to somebody's girlfriend, and it'll be on Channel 3 or Channel 10 and Channel 13 and in the paper that these folks got killed. Just look at last week, the young woman.
Whites die that way also.
Oh, but I'm black. But what I'm telling about,
it's an American
and in Portsmouth,
problem.
and I live next door to Portsmouth, which has a real big problem. We don't have a problem in Ghent or in Harborview. But what I'm saying is the fact that I got to go to where the problem is. The problem is in the black community. It's horrible. My kid has been robbed at gunpoint with 3 of his white friends. My colleague has been threatened with guns. I have been threatened with guns. And so I'm telling you, it is a black problem because it's affecting me.
No, you'll see the same thing in Roanoke. You'll see it in Western Virginia.
I'm not talking
where
about
you got those conditions.
Okay.
You see the same thing.
That's right, yo. That's right.
Don't get so excited. It's okay.
No, I am. Because when I remember when I first moved down here in Norfolk from Ghent, over here in this neighborhood across the way, we had 47 murders that year. And there's a young man who was writing for the paper. I still have your article. Oh, where's the outrage? I got it in a frame. And I'm waiting to hear the outrage. And I talk to Roger about this all the time because it really makes me sick to see our people, our children's blood flowing down the gutters of these streets. And then we're going to say it's not our problem. It is our problem. But I think it is a family problem. That's where it starts. Parents are not teaching their kids the value of life. Now, if you really want to have some control and you really want to do something about this, let's get the movies. Because they're nothing but violence. And these kids look at killing somebody on the streets just like killing somebody on one of these little screens. And let's do it at the Hollywood. Let's go get all of these crazy movies. I was going to say something else. Crazy movies with all of this violence in it with no theme whatsoever, but to kill.
Carol.
I'm speechless because then you would have the issue of censorship. And that would.
He's got a pen.
Wait a minute. Let her finish.
I agree that some of the movies are off the top, but I also think that then you're going to have the movie industry and people who are invested in that arguing that this is censorship and it shouldn't be. Yeah, and so there you're going to have that problem. To say that it starts with the family, I think most of us would agree with that. But you, big brother, can't reach down into each individual family and say, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. Well, at some point, there's a limit.
I think that, again, I never said that it's not our problem. I said that it's not a black problem only. It's an American problem. If you want to look at media and the impact that violence in the media has, then you can merely go to the researchers who have looked at that to see if there's a correlation. And there's not much research that you're going to find that's going to tell you that there's actually a correlation. So but by doing those types of things, it will guide you on where can we get the solution and where can we get the problem.
Roger, do you think that control, any type of gun control measure, is going to lessen the amount of illegal guns on the street?
I think there could probably be some steps that we can take. There's been talk of different readers to my column say, well, are we doing enough with something like Project Exile? Is that, how well is that operating? Do we need to push that
Can you
up?
explain what Project Exile is a little bit?
It's greater mandatory minimums for gun possession or illegal gun possession and things of that nature. And the thing that just gets me from the gun rights enthusiasts is they say there are enough gun laws out there, but when the president or governors try to start enforcing some of these, like what the attorney general did recently in Virginia in terms of these reciprocity agreements with other states, then they start complaining about that. So I don't think that we should ever see as one thing is going to solve everything. I think it's a combination of things. It's trying to make families better, knowing where your children are, and boosting it up. It's trying to get these guns off the street that are causing, usually handguns that are causing so much trouble. I'm not as these mass shootings, they're terrible, but it's the daily almost mind-numbing killings that really, it just drives me nuts.
Absolutely.
And I've done columns and I've done news stories on it in Detroit, and I've done some stories on this 17 or 18-year-old young lady who died. She got shot in the head from coming out of a party back in about a year ago in 2014, latter part of 2014, and it just drives you nuts. She wasn't doing anything but just being at a party. So, yeah, can we do something? Yeah, and I think we can, and I wish there wasn't so just so much opposition to that.
Speaking of that, let me move on to our next topic because it dovetails directly into the conversation that we're having. So the Cuyahoga County, Ohio prosecutor Timothy M. McGinty announced the grand jury decision not to bring criminal charges against the police officer who shot and killed Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old African-American boy who was playing with a BB gun, and police mistakenly thought it was a real gun. There were lots of calls for calm. Let's take a listen to what the prosecutor had to say.
A short time ago, we informed Tamir's mother of the grand jury's decision. It was a tough conversation. We again expressed the condolences of our office, the sheriff's detectives, and everyone else who has worked so diligently on this case, and our sincere wish that these events on that traumatic day at the Goodell Rec Center had unfolded differently. She was broken up, and it's very hard. We explained to her that this was a difficult decision also, but that to charge police, even a situation what was as undeniably tragic as the death of her son, the state must be able to show that the officers acted outside the constitutional boundaries set forth by the Supreme Court of these United States. Simply put, given this perfect storm of human error, mistakes, and miscommunications by all involved that day, the evidence did not indicate criminal conduct by police. I call for the leaders of our community to now respect the process and the decision of the grand jury and to urge others to express their opinions in a peaceful and lawful manner.
Well, we march when police officers shoot an African-American male. We don't march when it's happening in our own community. And some people say you're blaming the victim.
Well, I don't know if that's totally true.
Okay.
I think that a lot of times the marches and the things that go on, because both Roger and I have written about, when I was writing on the Peninsula, about grassroots organizations that would be out on the street when something would happen and would march and try to draw attention to black-on-black crime. I think it doesn't get as much attention because when a police officer, a public servant, does something like that, obviously it becomes heightened as well as it should. And for this situation, I just really feel for the parents, because it's almost mind-boggling how you can believe your child is out there, and then the police come up on the child and they're essentially gone. But what I think, as an African American in this society, what I see and what I think bothers a lot of us is that when it comes to the criminal, like I call it, the legal technicality system, is that it works properly. When an issue like this happens and it's a white officer, black child, it is very carefully that everything is gone through T's are dotted, T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and you come to a decision where if you really look at this, you can see, I'm being honest, I can see the clear logic as to why they did not indict. You can see it clearly. But it's like when it involves an African American on the other side or something like that, there's almost this immediate jump to judgment, jump to an indictment. Now, to be fair, we have right here in this community in Portsmouth, where a white officer was indicted for shooting an African American male in the Walmart situation. So again, and I would imagine in that situation, they went and looked at everything carefully and said, no, it is what it is. We have enough evidence to go forward. So that's a really, for a lot of the white listeners, I hope they understand that. That is, when it comes in the black community, when a situation like this comes, it seems like when it involves a white officer, the utmost care and professionalism is done as it should be. But when it's another way around, it doesn't always seem to go with that same level of care and professionalism.
Yeah, I'll talk about Tamir first. I urge you to take a look at the December 29th New York Times editorial on it, headline, Cleveland's Terrible Stain. I'm just going to read the lead of that. Tamir Rice of Cleveland would be alive today had he been a white 12-year-old playing with a toy gun in just about any middle-class neighborhood in the country on the afternoon of November 22nd, 2014. And I think that that's the thing that's most jarring about what happened. It is if, I'm sure we've all seen the video of the police officers who came up on that scene, and it is as if they gave no margin for error for this young man. Now, should the dispatcher have given all the caveats that should have been given? It was a young man. Right, that it was a young man, it was probably a toy gun, yes. But how could this young boy, as we now know was a 12-year-old boy, how could he have done anything, to comply with the officer's demands, given the way they rolled up on him and given the response by the officer who shot him? Why was this officer, who clearly was not fit for this job, allowed to be on this police department? And I think, young black men, they never get the benefit of the doubt. And, right or wrong, they never get the benefit of the doubt. And that's the thing that is just so frightening if you are a young black man, or if you are the parents of a young black man, or if you love a young black man. Whether right or wrong, you never seem to get that extra benefit of the doubt. And clearly this 12-year-old boy didn't in Cleveland.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the mother said, quote, "I don't want my child to have died for nothing, and I refuse to let his legacy or his name be ignored." She said, as the video shows, Officer Lohman shot my son in less than a second. All I wanted was someone to be held accountable. Carol.
Yeah, when I saw the clips, I think I reacted not as an attorney or as a legal scholar, but inside, I was saying, what happens to giving a warning? Do police officers give warnings before they take the next step? And then the second thing I asked was, I looked at it and I saw a child. Is there a different standard for dealing with someone? And I know if you think he has a gun, you have to be very careful. But this is a child. Could you say, young man, put the gun down, or give some kind of directions before you take the... Then thirdly, is it possible that you could have shot in a non-fatal manner?
Well, they
in
don't
the
teach.
air.
Police
Shoot
officers
yourself.
are not taught to
Yeah.
shoot in a non-fatal
No.
manner.
Okay,
no.
Yeah,
even with
there's-
children.
No,
I
you
mean,
can't
doesn't
fool
matter.
nobody. You got to shoot 'em.
The training is if you have to pull your gun, then you must be prepared to use it with force. I mean,
Okay,
so
well, use it with force on an ankle.
no, you
or-
can't do
No,
it on
no,
that.
no,
You
no,
have to
no,
shoot to
no,
kill,
no, no.
Carol.
Oh God! Well,
Unfortunately, that's the way
Okay.
that they are trained. One of the things, Bill, that was brought out though, speaking of Tamir being a 12-year-old, was that he wore a size 12 shoe and size 36
Okay.
pants. He was 175 pounds. He was a big kid.
Oh, okay.
So, it sounds like some of the justification is that this officer thought it was a man.
Man.
Now, I'm going to go with Will on this, and you could do it
I know.
with statistics or anything else. My son was the same size he was, going to Norfolk Public Schools, and he was considered dangerous. So it's just a fact. And I had to pull him out and put him in Williams School because they kept looking at him as if he was not meant to be there. And there were larger white kids as well. But black men and black boys are presumed to be guilty and dangerous. And that is just the way it is.
Let's talk to Mike in Portsmouth. Hi, Mike. You're on the air.
Yes, hello?
Hello? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'd just like to say that there's been a lot of misinformation, even from the gun owner. I'm a gun owner for many years, and I've handled all types of weapons as a young child and trained. But putting that aside right now, there's a lot of misinformation, and one thing for sure, the mayor cannot solve the ills of society.
Amen.
The police chief cannot solve the ills of society.
Amen.
Whether it's the home or not, at a certain age, I don't care if you have a crackhead mama and a drunk daddy. You know at 14 or 15 why you running from the police to your aunt's house hiding out for a week.
Amen.
You know why. And I don't care what kind of parents you have. You know why you're running. And there's personal responsibility.
Thank you.
I don't care if there's jobs. There are criminals out there that got better jobs than I have. But it's about the thuggery.
Okay, Mike, thanks so much for your call. Bill, I hear you amening. Go ahead.
Well, he's hitting it right on the head. There's nothing else to say.
There's no solution to that.
No, there is a
But
solution.
the problem is there's no.
He wasn't raised right. Some of our children aren't being raised right.
Okay.
So they don't understand the difference between right and wrong. They don't have the discernment.
And the solution for that is
And the
what?
solution is for them to have parents in their house or somebody who can teach them the difference between right and wrong and consequences to bad behavior.
And so who's going to make
And that's not the mayor's job.
And
That's
see-
not the police chief's job.
Go ahead,
That's
Carol.
not the mayor's
Let
job.
Carol go ahead.
Yeah, and I know that it is the family's responsibility and the parents' responsibility. But if the parents aren't doing what they should do, what then?
Well, hold on a
Reform
second.
school.
Hang on a second. Sarah calls us from Newport News. Hi, Sarah. You're on the air.
Hey there, I'm working, so if you hear anything in the background, it's from my job.
Okay.
I'm calling because on a local level, we can change things like the minimum wage, where parents don't have to work long hours, 2-3 jobs, so they can be there with their kids. Also, we can look into rehabilitative programs, so the folks that are going in prison, it isn't a high rate of recidivism, because a lot of things related in the criminal system has to do with drugs. And there's no rehabilitation programs out there.
Okay.
So to get the family back together, we have to solve these problems as a society.
Thank you, Sarah, for your call. I appreciate that. Roger, you want to respond?
What I want is, okay, so the mayor can't be in every house, but can he convene interested parents, interested mentors in churches? Yes, he can do that. Can he use the bully pulpit in a way that can bring more attention? Yes, he can do that too. I want more time on that, less time on wondering whether we should move the Confederate monument. And I think that's what a lot of Portsmouth residents want. And I think some Portsmouth residents are not saying that because they are black and they don't want to call out a mayor who's black, quite frankly. And you see some a breaking of that. You see some of that is starting to change. Yes, he's up for re-election this year too, and so that's going to be an issue as well.
Bill and then we'll move
I
on
want
to the
answer
next
that
one.
young lady's question regarding raising the minimum wage and all that stuff. Here's a lesson in life. Do not have anything that you cannot afford. If you cannot afford to have children and work 3 or 4 jobs to take care of them, do not have them.
Well, but what if you have them already? What are you supposed to do?
Get a second job. Get married.
Okay, but then she can't be home.
But if you have a second job,
there's
then
a
You
circle
don't
there.
have children. I mean, there's consequences in life.
Right, okay, but after the consequences,
and
okay.
I am not beholden to what you do. You are responsible.
Okay, but if I'm not beholden, and then your child comes and robs me or shoots me, then that affects me. I think we should understand our shared interests in this, and if we can help one another, and if we can say, okay, you have 2 children, but you're trying to improve yourself, how can we help make that happen? Okay. Is there something that you're willing to do to try to improve yourself and to make your family better? I think we should try to help that.
Well, last word on that, and we're going to move on.
I know you want to move on. I'll let you move
Go
on.
ahead. No. Go ahead.
No, I just think that the caller was on point in saying, to Bill's point, okay, you've had a breakdown in the family. One of the issues has been that now you either have both parents having to work outside the home. Generations ago, you didn't have that. So when you had a parent in the home, that parent was able to monitor and work with that child better. So she's looking for solutions. Whether the minimum wage is the solution, I don't know if that's the solution, but she's pinpointing how you address the problem. And we need to get more of that than people just bloviating about this is the problem.
I gave it an answer.
But
I gave
okay,
her
no,
an answer.
that's your
You don't wanna hear
opinion.
it.
No,
I
I don't think it's a question of not wanting to hear it. I think it's a question of yes, people agree with you that you shouldn't have kids if you can't afford them, so forth and so on. Life circumstances change. So what are you supposed to do?
And we have a safety net. People can get public assistance up to almost $46,000 in food, rent, lights, even on Obama phone. So there is a safety net, and they're churches, not an unintended consequence on something that I didn't have any responsibility in bringing into this world.
Okay. With that, I'm going to move on to the next topic. Bill Cosby charged with sexual assault in Pennsylvania one day before the statute of limitations kicked in for the case against Andrea Constant, who says Cosby drugged and sexually abused her in 2004. Cosby is suing several women who accused him of sex abuse, suing for defamation of character. Is Bill Cosby done? I mean, what does this mean altogether in terms of who he is and who we thought he was, and should we care?
Oh, it's never going to be the same for him. It's never going to be the same. And I would just encourage people to allow the situation to play out. It's in the legal justice system. Allow it to play out, because I think there are going to be some surprises in both directions. You know, there's going to be some of those stories of some of the women that came forward are not going to pan out. Some of the stories that have come forward, they will pan out, because he's, in his own deposition under oath, has alluded to and opened up the Pandora's box that he's been, involved in some way in a kind of behavior he's been accused of. So I say let it play out. And, hopefully as a society we will be better for it. But it's never going to be the same for him.
Carol, from a woman's perspective.
Well, I think you have to think of it, as Will said, first of all, some of them will play out and some of them will not. From my perspective, I see this as, let's look at each individual case and then make a determination. It's hard to blanket them all into one. Now, I know that there are class action suits in which they do this. I think that what has happened in this case is it's hard to separate the icon, Bill Cosby, as an icon from the real person. And that's difficult for us because so much of his life was played out in the media. But we've got to be able to do that, and we're going to have to look at each individual situation and each individual case before we can do that.
Roger?
Yeah, whether he's actually, he ends up convicted for these charges stemming from the case involving Andrea Constant, I think is besides the point. Like Will said, I don't think he's ever going to enjoy the public prestige that he's enjoyed up to the last few years or so. You're never going to be able to look at him again. You're never going to eat Jell-O the same way again without, realizing that. And, it's tragic, but it's also tragic for the women who were involved in, who have come forward and accused him, and for the allegations that they're claiming that the things that he's supposed to have done to them.
Okay, let's go to Mark in Norfolk. Hi, Mark. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year to
Happy
everyone.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Good. Just very quick, one of the solutions that's been on my mind and heart, or as what you were talking about very quick, is one is the concept could be public-sponsored bordering schools, where basically the public school system can actually have a 24/7, 365, system for children who basically need to get out of chaotic situations in order to learn. And just to pivot to Bill Cosby, I'm just suspicious of the timing of all of this happening all at one time. And then lastly, my concern really is that ultimately an attack on Bill Cosby, will this then now have a subliminal effect on how the positive image that over time he took to build up, will this have a tearing down effect that's going to be associated and tagged along with his image?
Okay, thanks so much for the call, Mark. Anybody, Will?
Yeah, I actually agree with that idea. Bill and I have this is like landmark situation.
It really is.
2016.
We've been looking at
agreeing.
that.
Yeah, we agree.
But we've talked about that before,
Yes,
about
absolutely.
boarding schools for these urban students that are in these chaotic families. Because,
Absolutely.
again, boarding schools used by the affluent are used for the same purpose.
Now, we agree.
To have the student go away,
Absolutely.
get cultured, develop, and they get on a track that takes them to Harvard, Yale, all of these top schools and top situations. So why not do that for the kids who need it the most, because they're coming home to chaotic situations? Again, another example of a solution.
Bill.
No, Will and I have been talking about this for years, and in fact, 15 years ago, Dr. Harvey over at Hampton wanted to create a public-private boarding STEM school, all the things people are talking about now, 15 years ago. And the teachers' unions and the Democrats, they went crazy and turned it down. What we thought needed to happen was you had to get these kids immediately out of the environment, immediately. Show them where people were productive, show them where people had order in their lives, and then to let them blossom and then go forward, and then let that be a test rocket so that we could rebuild the pipeline so African-American kids could go to Norfolk State and Virginia State and Hampton University and be prepared for life. But we were flatly turned down. It breaks my heart.
Carol, we got 10 seconds. Last comment.
Well, I agree with both of them, and I think there was a time that even without that, we had Upward Bound and Head Start and all of those programs, and they are gone now. So maybe we need to look at the federal government to do something as well, although that's going to be difficult.
All right. Roundtable, thank you so very much.
We
are just about out of time. And that's
God.
our show for today. If you'd like to hear it again or share it with a friend, download our podcast at anotherviewradio.org. You can also find podcasts of previous programs and sign up for our eView newsletter, a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. We're on Facebook, and you can reach out on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Carla Johnson answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.